Greetings friends, and welcome back to our archives. Tales of the Jedi has given us the long-awaited personal look at Dooku's journey to the dark side in canon. While we have had novels such as Dooku Jedi Lost that explains it quite well, I believe that Filoni and the team has given us something absolutely incredible with each of these shorts perfectly depicting Dooku as a character, and as a character that we have never seen him before. For this video, we wanted to do a deep character dive, exclusively talking all about Dooku and his many layers. I believe Dooku to be one of the most complex characters in all of Star Wars and its main cast. From his appearance in Attack of the Clones and every subsequent appearance through the Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith, Dooku manages to separate himself from all other kinds of Sith and all others that we've seen before. And honestly, he is a much different kind of villain that we are used to in Star Wars. Deep down, he is a kind-hearted person who genuinely wants to see the galaxy at its best. Like Anakin though, whose intentions were pure and just wanting to save his wife, the dark side twisted and corrupted these noble causes and made the two Jedi servants of evil. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the complexity of Dooku. Dooku's personality is that of being a noble stoic. Unlike most Jedi, Dooku cared about his appearance and made an effort to look his best, indicative of his noble heritage. This outwardly represented how he wanted the Jedi to present themselves: cunning, professional, and intelligent. Despite his straight and level-headed nature, however, Dooku was just as much of a maverick as Qui-Gon Jinn was, doing each act as a Jedi as he saw fit for any situation, not as the code dictated he should handle himself. We get to see this quite a bit in all of the Dooku shorts, especially on Raxus when he defies the council orders in order to solve the issue with the immediate and course that he decided to take, taking matters into his own hands when defending the farmers against the senator. Dooku even went as far as using the Force on his own Padawan to ensure that he didn't get in his way. However, Dooku may seem sharp and cold on the outside, although he does genuinely care for Qui-Gon Jinn and all of his friends. In the canon novel Master and Apprentice, both Qui-Gon Jinn and Rey Averroes frequently talk and think about their apprenticeships under Dooku. In their memories, Dooku was a strict, stern man who was emotionally distant and quite reserved with any sort of praise. There were many small gestures that Dooku did for Qui-Gon as a boy that showed his appreciation for him. And of course, in the episode Justice, Dooku praises Qui-Gon for acting as a Jedi should and saving many lives, even outwardly calling Qui-Gon much wiser than he, which for Dooku is no idle statement. This Jedi Master was one who didn't acknowledge work unless it was good work. However, in both this series and in Attack of the Clones, we can tell how much Dooku can't help but show his appreciation and respect for Qui-Gon Jinn, to the point where he trusted Qui-Gon's judgment and would have tried to turn him to the dark side. In Attack of the Clones, when Dooku is talking with Obi-Wan, he mentions how much he misses Qui-Gon. Furthermore, Dooku talks about how he really could just use his wisdom and needed Qui-Gon in this moment. Just from this, we know that Dooku was bursting with pride over his apprentice and considered him far more wise than any member on the council. It seems to me that Dooku may even hold Qui-Gon's wisdom in higher value than that of Yoda's. Concerning Yoda, Dooku seems to actually have a rather low opinion of his own master, and the two do not seem to agree in the slightest. In fact, it seems that Dooku understands how powerful Yoda is, and because of that, he resents him. Here is a quote by Dooku: "The Order's problem is Yoda. No being can wield that kind of power for centuries without being complacent at best, or corrupt at worst. He has no idea what has overtaken him. He no longer sees all the cumulative evils that the Republic tolerates and fosters, from slavery to endless wars. He never asks himself, why are we not acting to stop this? Live alongside corruption too long, and you no longer notice the stench. The Jedi cannot help the slaves of Tatooine, but they can help the slave masters." This was said by Dooku to Sidious as one of their many conversations. I think this quote exemplifies everything that he truly feels about Yoda and the Jedi Council as a whole. Dooku hated corruption ever since he was a Padawan. In fact, as a Padawan learner, he nearly killed 2 Jedi Knights because he had been led to the assumption that they were traitors. He was so adept at lightsaber combat that he beat them both and had to be stopped by other Jedi Masters. This brings us to our next point that both this quote and the meaning between Dooku and Sidious in the final episode tells us, which is that Dooku is a real hero, just a very brash one. The screaming similarities between Dooku and Anakin are very clear, and it is quite unfortunate that the two never really had an extended conversation, and a conversation where they weren't at each other's throats. Both of them are heroes at heart, and they both want to do the best thing for the galaxy. And yet, this justice and heroism leads them down a very dark path. Dooku shows us here that he is really actually a very kind-hearted person, at least at first, and his frustrations come about in a storm of righteous fury when he sees those less fortunate than him in pain. In the case of the farmers, he became enraged and force-choked the senator and was fully prepared to actually murder him for his corruption. While not the Jedi way in any stretch, we can see that he only got this way after seeing the villagers in pain and hearing the senator's villainous speech about turning them into examples. Up until then, Dooku was calm and collected, remaining professional throughout all the negotiations, and even despite being fired upon by the senator's security detail, he remains calm. However, the moment he lost his reason is when the senator venomously declared that he would destroy the people that he had already let suffer long enough. It was multiple of these occurrences, compounded by the fact that they were coming straight from the Senate that the Jedi Order was taking commands from, that changed Dooku's heart permanently. In the episode entitled Choices, we watch as Dooku investigates the first of many Jedi murders to come into the service of politics. This was one of the main reasons that Dooku considered leaving the Order in the first place. He was absolutely infuriated by the way that the Jedi were laying down their lives for political reasons, and getting caught up in business that they had no reason being in. The final straw was of course Qui-Gon Jinn, his own apprentice, and his death. Despite all of Mace Windu's warnings, Dooku simply couldn't accept that the Jedi Master's death was just circumstance, and he desired to know more about what was really going on. This, of course, ties into what we already know about Dooku, which is that he genuinely cares about all Jedi, a sentiment that persists even after he becomes a Sith Lord. We know for a fact that Dooku actively avoids direct conflict with Jedi, as he abstains from killing them himself. Now obviously, his record isn't squeaky clean, as his indirect Jedi kills are in the hundreds just due to his work with Jango Fett and the engineering of the Clone Wars as a whole. With that said though, he will do everything he can to stop from killing Jedi. By his own hand, he has killed 5 Jedi that we know of, that being Lom Pike, Cav Bayons, Master Teepli, Master Sifo-Dyas, and now recently, Master Yaddle. In many of these cases, he was either acting out of self-defense or to keep one of the Jedi from releasing vital information. The point being that it is never out of malicious intent that Dooku raises his blade against a Jedi. In fact, I don't really think that Dooku ever liked killing out of malicious intent whatsoever, which sets him apart from many other Sith Lords such as Sidious, Vader, and Maul. It could be said that out of all of them, he may even have the best heart. While the dark side does corrupt all intentions, no matter how pure, we can tell that Dooku at least makes an attempt to keep his goals in front of him at all times. In the beginning, Dooku allies with the Sith because his ideologies with the Jedi have been polarized, and he wants to simply rid the galaxy of corruption. However, he still feels guilty for betraying all that he knows, even though he is convinced that this path is the right one. In Attack of the Clones, Dooku seems more like a political idealist with a set of morals that follows him through his endeavors. He tries at every turn to gain allies, even going as far to reveal information that the Sith had infiltrated the Senate to Obi-Wan, essentially his grandson. During the Clone Wars, we watch as Dooku progressively slides deeper into the pit of the dark side, and all these morals previously mentioned begin to be melted away one by one. War crimes are abound, and while he doesn't delight in the suffering of others, we can tell it slowly stops bothering him, and he gets to the point where he will decisively murder anyone who crosses him. For a while, it didn't seem as though Dooku really cared much about the Sith, and he seemed to withhold a certain part of himself from the dark side. I say this because it is very rare that we see Dooku actually have the yellow Sith eyes so indicative of the dark side. While this feature can be suppressed, it takes a very long time, and it is very deep in the Clone Wars before we see this feature in Dooku ever show itself. Even by Revenge of the Sith, Dooku seems to have mellowed out somewhat, and remains just being a collected and professional Jedi, or at least a former Jedi. Though we know at this point, he has gone so far down the dark path that he is performing Sith rituals alongside Sidious. But now, I would actually like to talk about this relationship with Sidious, which is a rather interesting one. At first, it seems like Dooku and Sidious are close confidants, conspiring with one another in the shadows of the Coruscant buildings, right under the nose of the Jedi Temple. However, once the Clone Wars begins, their relationship shifts to being one of control and obedience. Dooku genuflects before Sidious whenever they speak, and Sidious, now with Dooku fully within his grasp, seems to have no reservations about abusing him, which we see several times during the Clone Wars. Sidious keeps Dooku basically isolated, pretending to be his friend, and then swiftly punishing him for even small failures. Does this sound familiar? Of course, this was the exact technique that Sidious used to manipulate Vader, and the cycle continued. first being one of friendship, and later abuse. Count Dooku was fiercely intelligent, and even though he was outplayed by Sidious in the end, he did have a plan. You see, it is my belief that Dooku was faking out Sidious this whole time, with his apprentice being Ventress. She was incredibly powerful and was growing in power every single day and extremely rapidly. Dooku knew how much Sidious hated Talzin, so he kept Talzin close, and perhaps took on Ventress as an apprentice to purposefully misdirect Sidious's attention. Meanwhile, he was actually setting his sights on raising another powerful apprentice to help him overthrow Sidious. At first, his plan was for Obi-Wan, going back to the events of Attack of the Clones, as Dooku was trying almost desperately to get the apprentice of his apprentice on his side, going as far as betraying Sidious to confide in Obi-Wan to tell him that the Sith had control of the Senate. Unfortunately for him, Kenobi, like his master, remained staunchly within the light. With this failure, Dooku tried to perhaps use Savage Opress, openly telling Savage that it was his plan to betray Sidious with his help. That, of course, though, turned up as another failure, as it was just a ploy by Ventress to get to Dooku. In the novel Dark Disciple, Dooku takes on Quinlan Vos as his apprentice, and perhaps was going to use him as well, but never got the chance to, as Vos was turned back to the light side in the end. Dooku ran out of options, and frankly, ran out of time. He desired to kill Sidious, and had decided to wait until the Empire was on the rise before doing so. His fatal mistake. He bided his time and made the intention to kill Sidious sometime either during or after Order 66. Unfortunately, Sidious knew this and got the jump on him, and Dooku learned the hard way that one can't truly outplay a Sith master. Count Dooku's story is one of tragedy, but yet is extremely compelling, and I'm glad we got this much of Dooku's real personality in these Tales of the Jedi shorts, where we got to see him as he truly was as a Jedi, not just a villain. But my friends, what are your thoughts on the complexity of Darth Tyrannus, Dooku? Did you enjoy his episodes in Tale of the Jedi? And do you like when we do these deep, in-depth character breakdowns? Let us know in the comments down below. And as always, my friends, may the Force be with you, and have a great day.